from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, oh boys, it's summertime. And this is a special summer episode coming out of the vault just for you. It's a part of Sleep With Me's commitment to you, whether you're a new listener or you've been listening to the show since the beginning. Returning to our roots of trying to put out 3 episodes, and then if you listen to Bedtime Stories from Sleep With Me, you could listen to 5 episodes a week, because we know Sleep With Me exists as a safe place within the world, you know, to keep you company and take your mind off of stuff so you could fall asleep. And this is a summer extra. It's a little bit older episode, to be a little bit looser, but I hope you enjoy it. We couldn't do it without all of you. And if you decide, you know, Sleep With Me makes your life better, has changed your life for the better, we do need your support. Those of you that your lives have been changed for the better by Sleep With Me in order to keep making the show. So if you want to opt in, not only will it have a positive impact on you, not only will you get the sweet bonus content, not only will you feel better about it, you'll feel great about it. You're helping out other people that had the same sleep issues as you. And people that are going in the middle of going through stuff temporarily that are listening, more casual listeners. So if you want to do that, you say, yeah, how do I give back to this thing that's changed my life? You could do that at Sleep With Me Pod. You could just, I'll talk about it here. Thanks. Sleep With Me Podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots. I'm talking about tonight's sponsor, Helix Sleep. And if you don't have a Helix mattress in your life, you got to think about taking the quiz at helixsleep.com/sleep. I've been sleeping in my Helix probably longer than you've been listening to this podcast. And I love my bed so much. I have a move coming up, and I'm trying to decide because I have to move in a couple different stages just due to things outside of my control. And I know I'm going to be in my apartment, but most of my stuff's going to be gone. And I'm like, should I keep my Helix there and then buy another Helix for my next destination? Or should I pay to have that Helix moved, but I don't want to be without it because I don't think I'll be able to sleep without it because I love sleeping in my Helix. And I know it'll be super easy if I take the Helix quiz at helixsleep.com/sleep. Maybe my needs and feel preferences have changed. So I could see what my options are. I could choose between a Luxe mattress, a Helix Elite, or just, you know, whatever comes up in my search. I know I'll have choices. So the question is, do you have that kind of relationship with your mattress that you don't want to be without it? Because if you don't, what are you waiting for, right? You could have a Helix shipped straight to your door free of charge and get testing it out. But the first thing you need to do is just take that quiz because Helix has you and your needs in mind, your feel preferences. How do you like to sleep? How does your partner like to sleep? So it is time for you to get a new bed. Because trust me, this summer, I do not want to be without my Helix mattress. And Helix has got an amazing deal lined up for you. Go to helixsleep.com/sleep for 27% off site-wide during their 4th of July sale happening now. This offer is exclusive for listeners of Sleep With Me. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for this exclusive 4th of July sale offer. That's 27% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. Everybody, this is Scoots. I need your attention. If you fall asleep fast, I really, really need you to listen and hear me right now. If you fall asleep fast and you're hearing me and I got you right now, go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus so I can keep doing this, so I can keep putting you to sleep fast. But if you are hearing me and you fall asleep fast right now, and that window's open, I may only have your attention for the next 10 seconds. Could you go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus right now on your phone, sign up to support the show, and set up the bonus content tomorrow? If you're one of those people that never hears the intro, never hears the episode, and Sleep With Me, and you're a regular listener, Sleep With Me, you fall asleep fast, and Sleep With Me makes your life better, or those two things are related, I really, really hope you are hearing me right now. and you're perking up in bed? Because Sleep With Me Plus exists so we can put you to sleep fast. It's the only way we're able to do it. No company would pay for ads that no one hears, right? And so for people that fall asleep fast, those of you that support the show on Sleep With Me Plus, support the show for everybody that falls asleep fast. Do you fall asleep fast? I'm just asking. Like if you have no idea what any episode's about other than it works for you, or you hear the intro and you fall asleep fast, and you're hearing me right now and listening to me, it is really rare. I am talking right to you, not in a general thing. You say, yeah, I fall asleep fast. I love this podcast because I fall asleep so fast, Scoots. I didn't know. Are you talking really to me? Yeah, really. No, I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding. You're probably the only one like out of everybody that falls asleep fast, you're the only one listening and paying attention to me right now. I'm not kidding. The stats back this up. And I really need you to think about supporting the show. If you fall asleep fast, you're using this show like a service. And it's a service I'm happy to provide, but I can only do it with people the people that say this is a valuable service. So do you fall asleep fast? Does that make your life better? Is that valuable to you, and not conceptually valuable, actually valuable to you, just like all the other stuff that makes your life better, right? Your favorite foods, your favorite books, your favorite films, your favorite shows. You pay for all that stuff, right? So if it's tangibly valuable to you, you're listening to me and hearing me, I hope you are. You could be that one person, and you're going to go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus and support the show. We designed Sleep With Me Plus with super listeners in mind. One big contingent of super listeners is people that fall asleep fast. I also like saying that. Go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Oh, Mystery Bard, a lot of people help out on this show. Who are they?
Chris Posty Poster Son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Carl W. the Legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcript.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. And don't forget, the most comfortable way to listen to Sleep With Me is with sleep phones. You can get Sleep With Me merch, Sleep With Me branded sleep phones at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones. And use Sleep With Me at checkout to get $5 off your order. The only way you can get the Sleep With Me merch editions is sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones. Thanks, everybody. What do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Hey, you all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. Welcome to Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, ups and downs, time, whatever's keeping you awake. I'd like to distract you from that. I'm going to send my voice across the deep dark night. I'm going to use these lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, I almost said gibbledygook, gobbledygook and gibbledygook. I don't think gibbledygook is a word. There's giblets, but gibbledygook. Yeah, I mean, I make up words when I need to. But here's the thing: I'd like to help you fall asleep. I'd like to take your mind off the stuff. I'd like to make you feel welcome, to earn your trust. And so here's what I propose. Here's how the podcast works. If you're new, I'm glad you're here. And here's the structure of the show. First 4 minutes or so, 4 minutes or less, ideally, in 2018. I'm trying to get right into the content as quick as we can, but to keep the podcast free and all the archives free, it's like listener support and sponsor support. So we do that right up front. And so after that, the business side, there's like about 12-minute intro. And a 12-minute intro, you could skip it. The timestamp for the story part is in the show notes. But a lot of people like to listen to the intro, which is where I introduce the concept of the podcast week after week, night after night, and kind of set the mood to ideally make you feel welcome, to put your shoulders at ease, maybe, to give you what at least it feels like a little bit more space, a little bit more security, if I can. And also you get an idea that I'm kind of a goofball because usually I say, well, what is this? Why isn't that a metaphor? Gibbledygook or whatever, or giblets. So I spent about 12 minutes trying to explain what the podcast is and make a metaphor for it. I've been doing that over 636 episodes or something. And thus far, we haven't had a definitive intro where it's like, okay, I nailed it. We never need to do an intro again. I mean, maybe I could talk about that like a gibbledygook or whatever. But so that's the intro. Then there'll be a story. This week it'll be like a recap of our last two series, like less of a recap and more of like a creative a discussion recap of like, how did I make these decisions, or who were these characters, or what drew me to this part of the story. And if you're interested in that stuff, you could listen to it during the day, but I do have a tendency to ramble and be obtuse. So even when I talk about the creative part of the show, it can be a real snoozer, and that's the whole idea. So we'll have a story portion, and then we'll have some thank yous and some good nights. So that's the structure of the show. And the other things to know is just because it's a podcast doesn't mean it has to put you to sleep. Oh, no, wait, it doesn't mean you have to listen. I guess I combined, that was a little bit of gibbledygook. But so just because it's a podcast, you don't really need to listen. You can kind of listen. You can barely listen. You can listen, though, intently, because I hope you can hear it in my voice. I do this because I care, and I'll be here the whole time for those of you that can't sleep or that are like just looking to hear somebody. I'll be here till the end. But because I'm here till the end, and because I'm giving it my all, you don't have to do any work. You don't even have to do any work listening or tuning in your ears or paying attention. I'm going to be here rambling in the background. Your boar friend, your boar bae, your boar cuz, your boar sib, your boar bud, boar bestie. I'll be here going on tangents and, kind of barely making sense. So you don't got to listen to me. And also, just because this is a podcast to put you to sleep, but without the pressure of falling asleep. I'll be here an hour to take your mind off stuff, and you just can slip into sleep whenever you do, or just listen to me, and we'll walk along a cloudy path, and at some point, ideally, you'll just drift off into the arms of Morpheus or whatever kind of sleep deity you want cradling you. It could be a giant loving puppy dog or, actually it's interesting. Gibbledygook comes from the Old Norse Jupiterlook, which was a cat deity. It's a cat sleep deity, the cat cradler. Maybe it was cradle cat, I think in the Old Norse they said. And what cradle cat would do, and like nowadays cats don't cradle anything, even though they said cats in the cradle and the silver spoon, Little Boy Blue and the Man on the Moon. I think that was from like another Old Norse myth, where Cuddle cat, would cradle you. And even, maybe time to time you've seen a cat nuzzle something like a kitten more than likely. And that's what Coddlecrat does. But if you can also, there's a puppy dog. I don't think I don't know the origins of that one. Or, nice, like a St. Bernard. That's another one. That's a real one. Like St. Bernard. That's like a dog god deity. You got to be okay with drool if you're sleeping. And you say, well, I don't know about that Morpheus. It's too, Hollywood ruined Morpheus for me. And I say, well, how do you feel about St. Bernards? You watch any Scooby-Doo or whatever? St. Bernards were always doing stuff in those, or, whatever, Looney Tunes. So they say, well, I could go for that. Drool's warm, right? Well, it's not only is it warm, it's cosmic drool. So, I mean, how could you go wrong? I mean, unless you say, well, you could go to Coddlecrod or whatever. You see me, I'm allergic to cats, so I can't, no offense, Coddlecrod or whatever. Like, I can't worship you. I mean, I worship you, but, at a distance, I say, well, when I sleep, and I don't want to out my, sleep deity, because, it's the deity of my choice, but I'll tell you what, I get around, no offense, right to St. Bernard on Thursdays, be ready. I actually wear a shower cap, and so, what was I talking about? That was a live slippage. I think I slipped over into, metaphysics of sleep deities or something. Okay, I mean, I guess, like, if you have to ask me my favorite, Coddlecrod is my, Coddlecrat or whatever is my favorite named sleep deities. Just depending when you should see when I travel, in these old Norse regions and I come in, I got a Leif Erikson joke opener. And then I go straight into, gather round, and they say, who is this person? I say, gather round. They say, I'm from the Leif Erikson Sleep Institute. I'm here to tell you the tale of Coddlecrod, or Coddlecrat. And they say, oh, Coddlecrat, who's that? And I say, the cat that cradles you at night, up there in the stars, and right in your bed, and they say, so, usually they ask about the cats, and they say, no, Coddlecrat has no claws. Or Coddlecrat does, but it's just, it just makes sure you have, dreams of lapping saucers of milk, or, whatever, you say you're snuggled in there. And I say, have you seen a cat nuzzle a kitten or bathe a kitten? And they say, sandpaper tongue. I say, no, the Coddlecrat has a pillowed tongue. And then usually people, this is just like how Sleep With Me works. People start getting confused and I just keep talking. And I say, oh, yes, the pillowing tongue. To pillow you so softly, Coddlecrat, it does. And that's, so I guess if you're new, that's kind of how the podcast works. I think I microcosmed or something. Also, I forgot, tonight's episode's sponsored by Cosmic Drool, available by the bottle, Cosmic Drool. Also touring this fall and available on Spotify, Apple Music, and, other, Google Play, whatever, Amazon Music, Cosmic Drool. They have a new album out, Coddlecrod concept album. Check it out, Cosmic Drool. Okay, so what was I saying? I don't know. So I guess I'm here to help you fall asleep, and you don't have to listen to me, and there's no pressure to fall asleep. Fall asleep at your leisure. I'll be here about an hour. The only things this show it doesn't work for everybody. And, if it doesn't work for you, I'm sorry. Give it a few tries, though. I recently saw a review. Someone said it took them 5 tries. And I say, holy cow, you stuck with it for 5 tries. And then it started working. I mean, because if you're skeptical, if this is your first time listening, you're like, what in the heck is this? Is it Coddlecrat or Coddlecrod? And they say it's a regional dialect. It depends on where you are. Also, if you've had, if you're, it just depends on... But yeah, like this podcast is a little bit different. But give it a few tries. I make this show because I've been there in the deep, dark night. It just hoping someone would sit by my bedside and say, wow, can't fall asleep, huh? That really seems tough. I could sit here and be goofy for you. And some of you might say, yeah, I pass on that. And that's cool. That's cool. But I say, hey, like, I could sit here and tell you goofy stories. Let me give it a try and see if it can help you. Strange thing for a child to yearn for. But, now I'm, doing my own wish fulfillment. And I also hope it helps you because you deserve a good night's sleep. And I really hope I can help. So I work very hard because I yearn to help. Thank you for coming by. All right, everybody, we're talking about tonight's sponsor, Quince. And I don't know how you like to spend your nights, but I got to ask you about your bedding and your sheets, right? How do you feel about them? Because Quince has options for you. They've got buttery soft sheets like the ones I got for my daughter to take to college. They have those crisp percale sheets. And now I'm looking at the hype of the Quince European linen. And I'm thinking, Scoots, it might be time to up your sheet game even more. Quince European linen sheets are light, breathable, and super soft with that perfectly lived-in vibe. Woven from 100% European flax linen, they have that heirloom quality that gets softer with each wash. And as I said, the same thing goes for their ultra plush duvets, quilts, pillows, and shams too. Quince has everything you need to level up your bed. But I didn't even get to the best part. Just like Quince's clothing, their bedding is half the cost of similar brands. By partnering with top artisans, Quince cuts out the cost to the middle person and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. Now, like I said, I have the Quince percale gingham bedding right now in my bed, but wow. This European flax linen really sounds nice for summertime. And I already, in my shopping cart on Quince, I have a black short sleeve linen shirt, so I might as well add the bedding to it. Let your bed match the season with cool, relaxed bedding from Quince. Go to quince.com/sleep to get free shipping and 365-day returns on your next order. That's Quince. QUINCE.com/sleep to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. All right. Hey, everybody. It's Scoots here, and it's time for a look back at 2 Thursday series in a row instead of just one. Unless I forgot, I don't think we did a Thursday recap of the first time we did a third season of After the Glass Slipper. I mean, I guess we kind of did a recap with Agatha, but that was more of like in Agatha's character. And then a more recent look back at As the North Pole Turns. So as we like to, or as I like to do in these series, is to kind of take a look back at like in a meandering, way down my recent memory, which is just as winding as my distant memory sometimes, and kind of look at the concept and how the writing went and how what the reception was and what were some of the influences. So we'll start with As the North Pole Turns, because that was very recent and it'll be a little bit easier to talk about. And so that was a 4-episode series that it was for the holiday season. And last year we didn't do a holiday serial or episodic series. And I do like, and if you're awake and you want to give feedback, I do kind of go back and forth on the holiday material because the whole idea of the show is to be inclusive, but also fun and silly. And I think I talked about it in a lot of I did talk about a lot this season, but it's like I was strongly influenced. The whole podcast was influenced, as is my concepts of adulthood and everything, by consuming massive amounts of television and movies as a child. And, so I don't know, where people lay or lie on that. But this year I was like, okay, let's try. It is also a challenge that I enjoy. And it also, I think it's a necessary part of the creation of the entire podcast is having written episodes on once a week, or, moving into 2018, it'll be about every 10 days. But I think I'm still going to be writing them every 7 days. That's just my process. But I think that affects the rest of the episodes in a positive way, because it improves how I'm exploring the show and the narration within the show, and what works and what doesn't work, and how do we develop these stories, and how does that transfer to the Trending Tuesday type shows, to the personal essay style shows, and to the even to the TV recap shows. So we'll be continuing to do a serial series because I'm already I'm just finishing up the writing process for the second episode of the new series. So after North Pole Turns, what I was trying to think of was at some point, in the last 6 months, there was the on Showtime, the Twin Peaks revival. And in preparation for that, I rewatched season 1 and part of season 2. And one of the things I guess I had forgotten was that it was also a soap opera, this is the first 2 seasons of, and that it had a lot of soap operatic elements in it, just nods and the acting and the directing. And the Showtime revival, or the Showtime continuation, or season 3, or whatever it's called, did have that as well. But I don't know, really watching, I don't know, it really stuck out to me, and it was something I greatly enjoyed, and just made me savor it on a whole nother level, being like, oh, I forgot about this this extra layer that Lynch and Frost were doing, and it just made it even more impressive. And it doesn't mean you have to watch that show or like it. It was just, it was an influence for me to say, okay, what about that's one genre we haven't made our way into, is soap operas. And there was the daytime soap operas, and then there was nighttime soap operas. And as a child, I wasn't exposed to nighttime soap operas till the Gen 2.0. Which we'll talk about in a second, but I did get exposed time to time to daytime soaps through my mom. And that would be either in the summertime sometimes, or when I was sick, or when I was home from school for a while in second grade, when I had injured my arm, and so I was home for a couple weeks, and I think I consumed a lot of soap operas with my mom. And not a lot, I think, and again, I'd have to check with her what was her soap. But in the 80s, when you didn't have DVRs and streaming television, and it was appointment television, I think there was probably 3 different soap operas competing with one another. And then even in the past, when I wasn't doing soap operas, I talked about this article in the New Yorker I read in the early aughts, I think it was, and I've linked to it in a long time ago. I hadn't been able to find it before I did this series, but just about the writing of soap operas, and this was, I guess, on the tail end of the daytime soap in the early aughts. But I did also read an interesting article about the daytime soaps and the development through the 1950s, and so I'll link to that and the major influences, and just really interesting and inspiring stuff. And then, okay, so let me talk. Yeah, I guess I'll talk about my personal experience first. And then I guess it was in the 90s was when 90210 and Melrose Place were on. And yeah, watch those shows. I'm not embarrassed. I guess I remember, especially Melrose Place was a very soap operatic. 90210 was somewhere between. It could be a soap opera sometimes, like when they had when they were adding new characters and stuff. like when I think Tiffany Amber Thiessen came out, and then she really had like this soap operatic turn. But whatever, like I was watching that, and then I was watching Melrose Place with roommates and stuff, not just on my own. But there is something about soap operas that is like both viscerally enjoying. I guess it's like a feast for the eyes, and then an emotional, like it just goes on these really, unlike this podcast, it's a much more sharp, windy road. And like sometimes can be so over the top. I mean, especially Melrose Place with Sydney. I just remember sometimes like just like falling on the floor laughing. It just like some of the plot lines, but it was still enjoyable. It wasn't, and it was, I guess, a level of suspension of disbelief. And a lot of times I think and I don't watch any of the new soaps, but maybe I should get into, I don't know, is Riverdale a soap opera? I don't know. That's what everybody's talking about. But is like that your belief is suspended in a way that like it doesn't pull you out of the narrative even because you're like bought in for that 30 or 60 minute time period. So those were my starting influences. It was like daytime soaps that I saw in my mind because I did find them interesting, and then occasionally tuning in. And this is kind of jokey, but it's true. Like I feel like 60% of the time I tuned into a soap opera in the last 20 years. It was taking place at a coffee house. That's how it influenced Donner and Blitzen. And it was like the opening, like, and there was like the singer-songwriter, and like somebody had just opened the coffee house, so like the dreamer character. And then the other dreamer character was either had stage fright or was going out performing for the first time or was watching the performance. And then, of course, it was like always these situations where then people could discuss things. So they'd be discussing before the performance or after the performance, or someone would come on stage. And then because of the Internet Archive, like I was able to listen to some now I'm forgetting which one I was watching. I think it was Guiding Light, which was the first soap. It went from a radio soap to a television soap, and I think that was what the New Yorker article that I'll try to link to was about. And I guess you could say that was like a radio drama. I mean, I don't know, like I'd have to look at or melodrama, I guess. So I listened to a lot of the first season, like the first season of Guiding Light. I think this is what I was listening to. I can hear it, Guiding Light. And then there was so it started off with a soap ad for soap, and I don't even remember the brand. Like it was some brand that doesn't even exist anymore. And it was a weird, and it was a weird title. I don't know if it was before branding. I thought branding, unfortunately, had been with us for all of time. But, it was like, I don't know. But anyway, it really was informative and really well done and podcast alike. And it heavily influenced what would be the structure of this 4-episode season. Because they did have this, it did heavily influence me how there was this voice, and I guess I didn't listen enough to it, but there was this voice, like the Jack Frost voice, that wasn't quite a narrator, but would key off a lot of the scenes, talking to the main character in the scene in some way, that was kind of like a conscience, or kind of was like a regretful voice, kind of like an internal voice that was also external and sometimes knew some things, or could be pestering the character. But to kind of set the place of the scene, it also helped, because it's audio, it did help shape the emotional resonance of the scene. And I mean, really brilliant. When I think about it from what I've learned about audio production and in audio storytelling, and the people I look up to, Within the Wires is something that is still I'm re-listening to episodes over and over again. I mean, this is different in some way, and this is but the way she was able, the creator, I don't know, was able to just use this short narration to influence the scene. So the character didn't have to necessarily talk about their emotions and the actor could express it, but then you had an understanding going into the scene. I just like it. It was I guess in some sense it was a narrative trick, but in a good way. And so that was something I said, okay, I want to keep that and maybe change it. And I made the character more, brought it in. But it was just interesting because it'd say, oh, Scoots, you're thinking about, what you're going to do later instead of thinking about the show. So what are you going to do later if you're not, something like that. And then that would be what would be the underlying, like sometimes it'd be the subtext. I don't know. It's different. It was different. And I don't know. And then I was just like captivated by the subject matter. And like it was just like, I don't know. It was really like, it's on the Internet Archive. Maybe I can link to it. And again, I think even I was reading like, is this like, I mean, it's on the Internet Archive, but like where the rights are for these kind of things, is even like kind of obscured. Like, is it in the public domain or is it a property? I mean, that's not super important, but, just really interesting. And then from creating a sleep podcast, it was like, okay, now how am I going to do this in a way that's sleepy and still tells the story? And what was the story I wanted to tell? And again, that's where I was influenced by Guiding Light. Was like they had like, I don't know if they had like actual antagonists, but they had people that were like practice antagonism. And it was kind of based on these two different couples and I don't know, like the beginning arc of the season of Guiding Light and this kid and like, oh geez, who's the kid gonna live with and just I don't know, I like I just really like charmed by it. And I was like, wow, they were all able to do all that to me physically and mentally and everything. And just these little tiny story bits. And so I said, oh, I wonder if I could do that for the podcast. And I liked the idea of this kind of like this one kind of even in the story, it was like the guy that ran the business and Guiding Light, the head boss, like a capitalist type figure. And I said, okay, well, that's topical. And it has some, like I said, okay, can we have something like that? But maybe, I don't know, like that's not all antagonists. It has some other side to it. And, that's where Reverend Molding came from. I guess Reverend Molding, we never explained why he was Reverend Molding. But that wasn't super, like that was just wasn't part of the story we were telling in 4 episodes. But he kind of was like this more mysterious, figure with an agenda that maybe the other characters didn't necessarily agree with. And like as an outsider bringing this agenda to the North Pole. And of course, I always like stirring things up, stirring up, like changing the like status quo at the North Pole is always like one of my MOs. Cause they say, Santa, you've reigned too long, but this was like also looking at the history. And since I was influenced by this Guiding Light in the 1950s, that's why I kind of chose the 1950s. And it also did look like, as I researched, that the 1950s were like a time when there was this transfer from, metal and wood toys to plastic toys, and plastics were becoming a thing and becoming used way more in household products and stuff. So I said, oh, that would be interesting. Like, and not exactly riveting, but if you were at the North Pole, it would have a tremendous influence. But as a listener, I mean, if you're at the North Pole and you're going to go from working on wood to working on plastic, that's going to have an impact on your day-to-day operations. But, when you're thinking about it, you say, Scoots, okay, well, that's it. That's interesting to you, Scoots. Interesting. So how many hours did you spend fantasizing about the North Pole transferring in the 1950s? And I say, yeah, quite a few hours I did. Because, like I said, this is Mellorama. Okay, so those are the big decisions. Those are the stakes in some sense. And I guess it wasn't enough stakes, plastics versus wood and metal, because I said, well, that's probably not enough for Christmas. I think I even joked about it in an episode. It's like, okay, if you're telling a Christmas story that takes place at the North Pole, there's really, your stake options are really limited. You either, are we going to cancel Christmas, or is Christmas going to be on time? Or who's going to, how are we going to get Christmas on time? Or who's going to replace Santa Claus? Or, but the stakes usually have to be, will the presents be delivered or not? And I think in this case, I said, well, we got a new idea. Have the freaking parents buy the presents. Which also, gives him, I don't know, I always look at the mythology of, well, what if the parents needed it? Now this is finally the Christmas tale that explains to the parents why you got to buy presents. Once upon a time, you may not have had to buy presents. So I don't know if that is a good myth. You say, wait a second, in 1949, Santa would have just brought my kids gifts made of wood or metal, and I wouldn't have had to worry about it. But now, fast forward 50, whatever odd years, 60 years, I got to go to the store and spend a bunch of money on this stuff. And you say, yeah, it's job security, right? Or trickle down something, they say. So what drew my attention was Reverend Moulding, like a mysterious, outsider figure with influence. And then I said, what's it like, where's the human touch? Which, again, the Guiding Light did a very good job. They had these, at least episodes I listened to had 3 tender characters, a husband and wife, and I think the husband's sister, who was married to the more antagonistic character. And it was kind of sometimes old fashioned. I mean, it was in the 1950s, but you'd be surprised. And so then I said, okay, where's the humanity going to come from? Or who are we going to care about? And that's when I said, at first I had this idea for Ginny and Jingle Jangle, like a husband and wife team. That were running, the elves. Or at some point early on when I was sketching it out, I was like, oh, should this take place? Should this be Mrs. Claus's story? I mean, you know me, I'm kind of over Santa Claus. I mean, not any, pointing the fingers away. I just think those stories have been kind of told. And then I said, well, even Mrs. Claus kind of feels like, so then I said, okay, what about this entire city, residents of the city and the whole operations, which is, it gets mind a lot, but there's nothing wrong with that. And I said, okay. And I had this idea for Ginny Jangle, and then I kind of had Ginny and then Jingle, her husband, maybe. And then as I started to sketch it out, I just found that Ginny was a little bit more powerful or something. She spoke to me. So I said, okay. I don't know about your husband. He's not really interesting. That was just it. I said, well, I'm not interested in your husband very much. And so then I started to think about, who does Ginny spend her time with? Who is she friends with? Who is she? Is she in, relationships with that interests me? And then I don't know who the first character was. Maybe it was one of the reindeer, which it turns out, I found out that reindeer with horns in the winter are women. Or female, I guess, but if you're personifying them, but so that was a little bit of a mix-up. But I had Donner and Blitzen, and then Rolfine and Fiona, and I think Fiona, the newscaster. I don't know who came first, but those were the characters that started to draw my attention, in addition to Reverend Moulding. But also I was worried about Reverend Moulding drawing too much of my attention because he was kind of a mysterious figure. And I was like, how much is this going to get caught up in the whole plastics thing, and how am I going to avoid that? But again, I'm writing this, I don't sketch out the seasons, because if I did, it would become a point of procrastination instead of a point of production. So I said, okay, well, we got these elements. Let's kind of start writing some scenes and, see how these characters interact. And I kind of had the feel for how the Guiding Light episodes were, which was a couple related scenes, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, related scenes, maybe around one character's, some sort of, it was more of a drama than a melodrama, I think. I'd have to get a dictionary and figure that out, but I said, okay, well, I have the idea for the plastics, so that'll be maybe the the current, the tension of current, and then I don't know, I started getting to know the characters, and then, I think I was already writing, but I wrote a couple scenes with Ginny Jangle, and then I was like, okay, well, maybe one of these reindeers kind of going through something, and they're needing some carings, and I was like, okay, that'd be Blitzen, maybe Donner, I don't know, they're in a relationship or friends or whatever, partners, but they're estranged. And really, I didn't think about Ginny's husband, I guess, until maybe, I don't know when I was oh boy, what did I do with her husband? And then I kind of had the idea for Fiona and Rolfine. And that was kind of influenced too by me watching all those Rudolph specials and saying, well, what there guy should be a snow person or a part snow person in this. And I think in contrast to drama or melodrama, I wanted to base it in real love, if I could portray that. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this won't be, maybe that'll make it more of a melodrama if these characters' relationships, or most of them, I think Rolfine and Fiona particularly, they had the strongest and most solid foundation in their relationship, which doesn't add to drama or melodrama, but to melorama, it, no relationship's perfect, and I know it gave me some freedom. And then I said, okay, well, maybe Blitzen and Donner's relationship is strained, but the foundation is still there somewhere. And then that kind of led me to Ginny and her husband. And that was more of her husband became more of a device, to be honest. I mean, I'm admitting it, than a real character. Because they said, well, okay, how are we going to drive this? Because the thing with, I've talked about this, but it's a good thing to always talk about is if the podcast, even though it's a sleep podcast, and I believe structurally the episodes need a beginning, middle, and end, even if that's so convoluted, it's tough to penetrate for a listener. Which I think from the feedback I got from these was this was very, difficult to penetrate. A lot of people were getting put to sleep. So that's a good thing. But that it also, to get a beginning, middle, and end, you have to have some sort of conflict or some sort of journey or some sort of, I guess you don't necessarily need a change. I guess you do, though. Even if it's not even if it's a melorama change, it's okay, and you need stakes, just because those are the bones of telling a story, to me, at least, even in a sleep podcast. And yeah, I have freedom to kind of, to make these kind of first or second drafts that don't necessarily, that there's loose ends and things like a husband. That's in a mysterious elven underground, and that Santa just hired a dude named Reverend Molding to consult on changing the North Pole over plastics. But I don't know. And also, not all my stories are warm and fuzzy, and I don't think this one particularly was, but I think having some couples, I don't know if I've done a lot of couples, I don't know. So maybe this will be something I return to in the future. I guess I've had non-romantic partners. But I think it maybe gave it helped underlie the subtext of the podcast, which is like, oh, this is a safe and comforting place. And it helped to allay any fears of the characters. Like, I think particularly but then explore their individual unhappiness that wasn't a result of their relationships. I mean, though, Donner and Blitzen, I think they could use, they could have used a little bit of time, to work things out a little better. And clearly Ginny and her husband, maybe they should just be friends. So yeah, then we just went exploring, and the kind of story kind of built itself to say, okay, a lot of times I have to do the first episode, and this is difficult in these really shortened seasons. And it was with this one is like, who are these characters? What do they sound like? Because I don't know what they sound like. And until I can write dialogue for them, but when they're speaking their dialogue and I'm kind of inhabiting them, I do, I guess, establish some intimacy with the characters, and I get to really get a glimpse of, a better glimpse of who they are and how they're behaving. And then it kind of will inform the rest of my writing. And so they can be difficult in the shorter seasons, and especially when there's kind of pressure to keeping contained. It can't just drag on and on. And I've been doing a lot of episodic writing, but it wasn't too challenging. It's so this can be the fun part. I mean, the writing was challenging for this series, but I think it was more my focus sometimes, was a little bit hard to come by. But yeah, then I got to spend some time with the characters, and then I also, if there is going to be action, I do like it to be fun, and so I was like, oh, that'd be fun to have some North Pole action. And then as I did develop this relationship with the characters, I was like, okay, well, Ginny, tell me your dreams, or Blitzen, Donner, Fiona. I mean, I think Blitzen and Donner were probably the most interesting characters as far as what they wanted and what they were dreaming about. And then it was an opportunity to kind of enable them to say, okay, well, maybe this could be part of the solution to the story, or to resolving the crises or whatever. And to say, here, let me help you with this, and let me make it in this situation, which I don't think a lot of storytellers have the luxury of, is and these decisions can make your relationship stronger, which kind of could fly in the face of a real narrative, a different kind of narrative, daytime narrative tension. So they I guess you'll talk about the feedback, which for the most part that I've seen and heard. I heard from one person that thought someone else wrote this, and they seemed not happy with it. But I do get that about everything. But most of the other people that I saw or heard from said, geez, I was falling asleep so fast, or even when I tried to listen, I couldn't get through it. I just was falling asleep or, losing focus. And to me, that's always a good sign. It means, okay, well, and it just draws my curiosity. This is okay, is it something about the way that was layered, that there wasn't this, I'm always interested in what is the narrative voice of this series or this part of Sleep With Me podcast? And how can I find, within my limited purview, new ways or new high points or viewpoints, or ways of narrating that are going to fit within the context of the podcast, where it's not just Scoots or Drew narrating or driving the story. I mean, that can work, and it does. So this was just an interesting one of more of a set piece, a stage play, with the only narration kind of being, so mostly dialogue, and then just the narration being this Jack Frostian figure, kind of twisting some knots and pointing out the emotional, pointing at the character and saying, hey, aren't you feeling this? Or aren't you really thinking about this? So that was fun. And it just really, it had a different feel for me, but within the tradition of Sleep With Me. So I think it transferred, which is always interesting. And it's funny because I think maybe these shorter things, because the Claude Neon one was also, that was 2 years ago. And that was a new narrative voice, I think, of like a reporter telling a story. So I think that's about it with the North Pole. And yeah, we'll see if it comes back. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I probably at some point, not in the near future, will try to return to this melorama, soap operatic, dialogue based. I mean, the first season of Superdoll was mostly dialogue based, or maybe it was entirely dialogue based. Now I'm thinking about writing it. I can still imagine, even though that was like 500 episodes ago, writing that first season of Superdoll is like really fresh in my mind for some reason. The only difficulty, I guess, that I had with Superdoll that was able to transfer was like having scenes with limited numbers of characters. And that was like always something that's very difficult with Superdoll. Is like, okay, I don't know what this team of superheroes, I can't tell a 50-minute bedtime story from all these different pursuits. Like it just, it becomes a little much to manage. But managing them in these scenes in a much more mellow area, like it just contained in the North Pole and living areas, I don't know, it's very freeing. Yeah, so that's the North Pole. We got about, let's see, like maybe 15 minutes here to talk about After the Glass Slipper Season 3. And I mean, believe it or not, I started writing that this summer. I can picture myself prepping it and being like, and I don't know, I think at one point I was in communication with one of her longtime listeners, Ahab's wife, who is a professor, and she was telling me kind of about preparing for the class, or we were just talking like work stuff, and it made me curious. I said, oh man, I haven't thought about syllabuses in a while. And at some point also I was like, okay, if I'm going to do another season of After the Glass Slipper, because Agatha is a character that I love very much, what would I do? What would the story be? And is there another story there? Because they said, okay, well, the first tale was her getting back with Cinderella, and then like the fallout from that. And the second season was her managing things in Cinderella's absence. And so I said, and I said, okay, do we do it? Like, is this going to be a backstory? And I said, no. I said, it was an interesting ending for her, being that she lost her corporal body and became a pit of lentils. That's intriguing to me. So I said, okay, well, what will we do with the pit of lentils? And then as influence as the North Pole turns, my consumption of Fraggle Rock, but my terrible memory, influenced this. Cause I said, okay, wasn't there like this wise trash heap or something in Fraggle Rock? And I decided not to do any other research than be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure like, and I said, was it wise or was it not wise? And I said, but like, and then I said, what are the names of any of the Fraggle Rock people? I said, I don't remember. But I said, I think you're right. There was like a really smart trash heap, and it was like an oracle. And I said, okay, so that's interesting. And I have a positive memory of that. And then in my positive memory, I was like, maybe not. Maybe the trash heap was not that great. And then I said, this is really the conversations that go on. I said, are you sure you're not confusing Oscar the Grouch with a trash heap? And my brain said, touche. And I said, he's someone a grouch that lives in a trash can. I said, are you sure you're not projecting Oscar's grouchy attitude onto the trash heap? And then I said, maybe there's other and I said, maybe it was a pile of leaves. I don't know. And I said, well, whatever. I could picture a talking trash heap. And I said, I could see that as an oracle. Is there something there? And I said, maybe. And then I said, well, okay, what is the context in this universe? And I said, okay, well, at this point that I can remember, because I don't have the luxury of continuity, because I just don't like at this point or in the past be able to find the time to listen to 16 episodes and take notes from the old episodes. I don't have a chance to do that. So I say, okay, what do I remember? And I remember, okay, the state of the world was, Agatha had saved the day. Cinderella was still like this wonderful leader. But the fairy homeland, I think, was lost. And maybe that was lost in season 1 anyway. But I said, okay, well, so we still have all of the fairy people, which are like, that were the descendants of the fairy godparents, I guess you could say, living side by side in Cinderella's community with humans. And whatever Agatha had done had reinvigorated them. So I said, okay, that makes sense. Okay, now they're all living together. And I said, okay, well, maybe she could be instructing them. Should she teach them how to be fairy godparents? And then I think from discussing things with Ahab's wife, and then I said, well, what about I don't know at what point I said, okay, maybe this could be like a mythology class, instead of how to be and I said, okay, it has to be interesting, because if they're trying to all live together, they're losing something. And there's then I started reading a lot of syllabuses online, and I mean a lot, but that's where Shelley came from, was okay, yeah, is this like a preservation of their cultural myths, versus these European myths or whatever you want to call it, and what's the difference? I mean, and I said, okay, so there'll be another character. Maybe it's a co-teaching. Yeah. And I said, okay, okay. And then we can kind of use myths or use fairy tales, to kind of help me, to influence, okay, what's the story we want to tell here in this episode? Kind of as a writing prompt, because I don't, sometimes I don't know where to start. And so, that's what it became. I was like, okay, and then I was looking at all these things and kind of sketching out. And then that's where we started with, was these two co-teachers with dueling syllabuses. But then I still was oh, how are we going to get there? I don't think this is episodic or a too boring. We could I always get worried we're in too boring a territory. And so at some point right away, I said, okay, well, and then who's going to tell the tale? Or who's and I said, oh, maybe it's the students are researching it. Cause I was are they going to be teaching out of a book, or is it Agatha's memory versus Shelley's memory? Or I said ancient texts. And I said, no, I don't like any of that. And they said, oh, the students, it could be an oral history project. But then I kind of was okay, well, I don't want to have to do too many voices. So student, at first I was oh, that's it, oral history project. But then I was no, I think maybe, I don't know if I was writing or recording when I was okay, that's not going to work. Agatha will have to present the material. This must have been before production, because I said, oh, okay, well, she could give a recap. So maybe it doesn't take place in the classroom. Because it's a little bit too much activity and a little bit too much distraction. I think maybe that was after the first episode where I said, okay, well, she'd have to interact with the students. And then I'd have to then I'm deciding who the students are. What are they then am I voicing the students? Am I voicing Shelley? So putting more into Agatha's control was okay, it's going to be her narrative voice, and strongly her opinionated narrative voice. And I said, okay, well, maybe she could do it as a recap of her day. At some point I stumbled on that. I don't know how, but And then I said, okay, and then we'll just write out, we'll look at these myths or fairy tales and use those and kind of like be like, okay. And so then I would like read a myth or I'd read a fairy. Well, actually, I wish it was that easy, but I would read like about a ton of myths in a row till something rang a bell. Or, I was reading fairy tales in a couple different, like a graphic novel of fairy tales and then a written version of the fairy tales. And then a lot of times listening to it and then being like, okay, which ones are sticking out to me? And I was doing that like in like laying train tracks. So I was like working ahead, like during non-writing time, consuming fairy tales and myths, and being like, oh, and I mean, so many of them are so amazing and mesmerizing, especially the fairy tales, like that I was like, holy cow, like there's just some that are just so dreamlike. And they clearly have, like a lot of the Grimm's fairy tales have, like, these layers to them. And so I said, oh boy, this is going to be good stuff. And yeah, I mean, it went up and down, I think, like looking at, like using them and then kind of telling a tale, but it really gave like a lot of, a dreamlike opportunity because the myths have even less rules than a structured story, but they still have a purpose. So it's like, okay, what is what would be the purpose in the fairy kingdom to be telling this myth? And, how would it be different than humans? And, how would it be like this myth? I mean, I think about Clam King and Benella, or like, like if I think the first two, like, or like, Daymak and Jalad or whatever. Like, I don't know. It was interesting to explore, and it gave me like once I knew what myth I had researched for the story, I said, okay, how can I tear this and break it apart and then rebuild it in a way that works for this story? I don't know. It gave me a lot of freedom. I think Agatha talked about all the stories and the myths that we used. But even pulling them from these different ones or reading them in a row, you see ones that are similar and you say, okay, what are these similar themes? And I don't know. And also thinking about the Agatha is from a fairy tale and she's a stepmother. It just was so, I mean, it had a lot of juice there. And she's a great character to spend time with. So it's just like, I don't know. And but it's hard also for me to go back to a character I haven't done in a while and get their voice and stuff. So I don't really try to do the voices as much as the personality and to be them and inhabit them. And she just has like this imperfection to her that's just really nice to be with. And in kind of like a confidence, and she's confrontational and opinionated. So really enjoyable. She speaks her mind, I guess. And so really fun to spend time with, and I think resonates with people. But also, again, very similar to North Pole, being like dense enough that it becomes like, especially like with these myths, you say, okay, with Clam King, wait, who's Benella? Like, why is Benella like living with the Clam King now? And then maybe like towards the end of the season, being able to link back to that myth, because seeing like other myths that, you're like, oh, wait a second, you're like, oh, wow. And just looking at the behavior of like gods and demigods and humans in the myths and thinking about like, man, you had some attitude, or in the fairy tales, just like, I don't know, just the way that like they'd get wrapped up or just a strangeness. I mean, because the like, frog song one, I mean, that was based on a very similar tale. The name escapes me, but it was like a bird instead. I don't know, like really like, I don't know, really enjoyable. And yeah, I hope I made like a dense bedtime story stuff. And in that one, like, yeah, it gave me like, okay, this will be a 12-week or 13-week series. I think when I first sketched it out, I was like, oh, that's like 16. But then I was like, oh, wait. Like, the timing didn't work out with the Thanksgiving. I mean, early on, I knew that. So I was like, okay, we'll make it 13 episodes. But yeah, like, that is, like, how we get, and then I said goodbye to Agatha. And again, I don't know, like, a lot of people ask when they have a favorite series, when's it coming back? And, like, or are you going to do this again? And I can relate to that as a fan of things. I could tell you that the first series for 2018 will be a new series, and it's something I'm excited about. And it was an idea I had, like, and then I literally I had the idea like 4 or 5 years ago. I guess while I was doing the podcast, so about February, so 3+ years ago. But the story just never came together, and I said, oh, okay, let's do this one. I think it's ready now. But other, like, repeats, like I don't know when there'll be another blankety blank series, just because, like, I'm not opposed to it, but it's like I wait for my subconscious to figure it out and say, hey, I miss this character. Hey, what if this, remember that? What if this happened? Or, hey, this just reminded me of this series. And they say, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, or I was thinking about Agatha, and I thought about the trash heap from Fraggle Rock, and that's where things started. I talked to somebody about teaching at university, and I think about syllabuses, and then I think about myths, and then it all comes together to help put you to sleep. And I appreciate you listening and indulging me, really, like, that I get to create these things within this context, and it ideally helps you sleep. And it still poses like this is always this puzzling challenge to me that I really enjoy. So thanks, and good night. Everybody, this is Scoots with a tuck you in message. So if you're still hearing me and listening to me, I hope this show is a part of your life, and it brings you comfort even when it can't help you fall asleep, or maybe most nights it keeps you company, helps you fall asleep, distracts you, your boyfriend, you know. And if the show does make your life better, makes your life a little bit easier, even in the depths of the night, like right now when we're just hanging out and plenty of episodes ready to go, I hope you'll consider supporting the show back. You know, Sleep With Me Plus is how we're able to be here night after night after night, and the listeners who support the show at any level for any amount of time, the show is a regular part of your life. And you could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And if you're chilling with me now today, why not try it out right now? You could try a 7-day trial, get all the bonus content set up tomorrow, see what you think, take 5-6 days. If it isn't the best way you've listened to the show, you know, there's like an entire podcast full of ad-free full episodes. There's an entire podcast full of story-only episodes. Those also don't have ads. And then there's a bonus podcast full of really, really cool stuff. And if you're a boyfriend or a boy best, you also get a podcast full of all-night episodes and all intro episodes. So please think about it. If you say, no, I can't support the show right now, I could still use your vote, yes, to keep making the show. Because just moving on from this message, if you're listening to me and you're saying, no, I'm not going to do anything, that's a no for me to keep making the show. And that's just a reality. The show is at a point right now where without the support of the listeners, we can't keep going. So if you can't support the show financially, you have two options. If you still want to be a part of something, you want access to ad-free episodes, you want the show to be here next year, the year after that, join the referral program at sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer and refer people to the free podcast. You'll get rewarded for it. Their lives will be better because you'll be helping them out. And it'll be a huge, huge boost to the show. It's way better to support the show through the referral program than telling me, yeah, one day Scoots will support the podcast financially. But now, right now, it just doesn't work. I'd rather you support the show right now through the referral program so we can keep making the show. So please consider that. Or just decide you're not going to support the show and fill out the form. You say, no, I'm not. I want you to keep making the show. Yes. I am a super listener, yes, but I don't want to support the show financially, and I don't want to do any, like, help out via the referral program. I don't want to help out, but I do want you to keep making it, and I have a good reason for it. You probably have a good reason for it. Fill out the form at sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. Because if we get 1,500 people in the referral program and then 1,500 people or something that say, nah, I want you to keep making it, but I'm not going to support it. It says to me that I should find a way to keep making this free podcast, even if it's going to be tough, because there's people willing to spread the word about the show, and there's people who are willing to say, yes, keep making it. I'm not going to support it, but keep making it. It's important enough for me. It's important enough to me that I took the time to make a choice and say, no, I'm not going to support it, which is 1,000 times more powerful than just tuning me out or ignoring me, or saying, yeah, I'll help the podcast one day, or I'll say no one day. That day may never, Sleep With Me might not make it to that day without one of those three actions. If you take one of those three actions, you could have full confidence. And not only are you a super listener, but you're a super listener that's invested your time back into the podcast and makes your life better. Thanks. And now we got the audio news, which we haven't done in a while. So this is what we got coming out on Sleep With Me Plus. A lot of this stuff will be coming out in the ad-supported feed as well. 1357 was a balcony brick building episode as part of the Orlando Park Stop fundraiser for the Trevor Project. Then we had Ray covering Horizons, the extinct Epcot attraction. That was also in as part of the Orlando Park Stop fundraiser. Let's see. We had a repeat of a classic episode, Hamlet with Brainbots. That's a really good one. Where I got out of the house. Great British Bake Off 6, Japanese Week. Then Bernie returns to the show after a long absence, even for a recording he never showed up to. And he does his reinterpretation of the story I told. So you could either sleep through it or wonder what Bernie's version is. That's Cat on Yarn. Then a classic TNG episode, Fistful of Datas, or Datas, you know. Then Bessos 11, Big Farm in the Sky, Bessos 11. Then something 2. I can't read my handwriting. Friend 2? No. Fox 2? Huh, interesting. An episode. Oh, Frankie and Victor, part 2. Then Jenny, the new username generator. One of my favorite episodes I've ever done. And then a 4th of July all-intro episode. That's what we got coming up. But we're also deep into subscriber summer. So if you listen on Sleep With Me Plus, if you're a Sleep With Me Plus subscriber and you're listening to this, one, if you ever need any help at all, just send an email to our support team, support@supercast.com. But also all those episodes are going to be in the ad-free full episode feed and the story-only feed. So all those are going to be coming out. What else we got? So if you're a Boar friend or a Boar bestie, you have the all intro all night feed. There's an all intro that comes out on June 5th, June 12th, the all night Boredom Institute episode. And they're called all nights, but they're around 4 hours long just because of the file sizes. We can't make them any longer than that. And then an all intro episode comes out after that. And then in the bonus feed, subscriber summer is in effect. So in the bonus feed, we got Posty 189 came out June 11th. Oh, no, not June 11th. June 11th, first subscriber summer episode, I think, comes out. Archie McPhee catalog. I think I read through 3 different Archie McPhee catalogs. Then Posty 190. Then Ray on a balcony in Anaheim. Holy cow, I can't wait for that. Right, Ray? And then either Frank, episode 12, or episode 14, depending on which level you support the show at. So a lot of great stuff. If you support the show on Sleep With Me Plus and you're hearing this, thank you so much. Could not do it without you. Remember, you could always get a hold of support at supercast.com. Make sure you are either on our Discord or subscribe to the Sleep With Me Plus newsletter. You've gotten we've been sending out emails about it. And you can always reach out to me anytime through the contact form on our website. Anybody can. Can't do without all of you. I'm happy to be here to put you to sleep, and thanks so much for listening, and good night.